I'm like, that's fine, but I am not
Well,
playing.
find your seats. We're
Like,
going to resume.
because no negotiable I did this like, oh crap. Oh, but they don't need
So I was putting this conference together and looking for, I'd like to find different things that we can do. And I came across Dr. Saara, and I thought, you know, this is something we've never touched on, so this would be quite interesting. And I connected with her, and she was more than happy to work with us. So she's going to talk to us about ADHD in the workplace, how to manage people that have it, and if you're a supervisor that has it, how can you be more effective in dealing with what you have while you're managing people. So, with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Saara Haapanen, and she can tell you a little bit more about herself. But welcome, Dr. Saara.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Saara Haapanen, and I really want you to get out of this presentation whatever is going to serve you the best. So whatever you take from it is exactly right, and I promise whether you're working with ADHDers or not, you will learn something and do something different today. So you will notice you have a workbook in front of you. The very first thing you're going to do is write your name on that because this is relevant to you. Okay, so I'm going to go over some different things today, and I want you to reflect on how do we make this relevant to myself, to what I do, to the humans I work with. With that being said, please raise your hand if you work with humans. Okay, please raise your hand if you've ever been in a position where you need to motivate someone. Okay, great. So, I did a PhD and a master's thesis on motivation. Usually I teach about motivation. I'm a published international researcher in that, but I'm so excited to talk about ADHD because it's my current hyper-focus. Does anyone here know they work with an ADHDer? Okay, I'm going to give a little hint. There's 20% of the population who's ADHD, okay? That's in your workbook. You don't have to follow along, but I'm going to help you take notes. I'm pretending everyone in this room has ADHD, so we're going to learn a little bit differently. The last 2 pages is also just blank notes, so if you don't want to do it my way, this is your life. You do you. Okay. So I have an agenda. I'm going to click here. I have an agenda, but my goal today is to share how my brain works. Hopefully you can take that into consideration when you're working with other humans. A question I'm asked all the time, I'm going to talk about some characteristics and whatnot. What if I have ADHD, you might think. So, regular humans, neurotypicals we call them, experience ADHD things. It is ADHD, whether you're diagnosed or not, when these are happening all the time, and it's a problem for your life, okay? So all humans are gonna have some of these things. It's just when it's consistent over and over and over again, okay? That's when you might wanna think about ADHD. I am unmedicated today. I go down rabbit holes, but I have slides. So feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask questions. I have slides to come back to. Like this microphone. Okay, so we're going to talk about strengths. We're going to go over what ADHD actually is, how to help you as a leader. Anybody here a leader? Nice, do you have humans? Or maybe you have children? If you have children, you are also a leader. Okay, cool. I'm going to have you interact with me, hopefully, and maybe the people at your table as well. Again, I love this to be interactive, so if you have questions, please ask. I love being interrupted. My brain loves it. Okay. A little bit about me. that girl in the corner, that was my freshman year of college, 2003. Okay, I got the freshman 15 plus more. It was at that point that I became hyper-focused on health, wellness, and fitness. And I'm happy to say that is mainly how I make my living today. This wonderful lady in the corner, that's Jenna. She's been working with me for almost a decade now. These lovely ladies in the corner, I do a lot of corporate health, wellness, and fitness. And then that picture of me in the middle is I was a diver. I didn't realize at that point that chasing dopamine and adrenaline is a key characteristic of ADHD. So there hasn't been a study on this, but in my mind, if you are in a crazy sport, if you like adrenaline, you probably, I think there's like an 80% chance that you may or may not have ADHD. This is one of the things that's challenging. As athletes, we excel because we have a schedule, because we have someone telling us what to do. We know what our goal is, we know when we need to show up, and what we're supposed to do. ADHDers hate schedules, but we need them. So lesson number 1, if you can help someone in your life who you think may have ADHD to create a schedule that can change their life. That was my life goal. I grew up in Canada, got myself a newspaper route at the age of 10, started making my own funds so I could buy a trampoline. I bought a trampoline, and I wanted to go to trampoline lessons, but they were way too expensive. But at the pool, they had a trampoline, and I could do diving for much cheaper. So I had been a gymnast for like a little bit. I'm also hyper-flexible, which is a comorbidity of having ADHD. What I've realized through my life is everything that I thought were these Saara characteristics have turned out to be ADHD. But I got a scholarship. I went to the University of Wyoming, and I got to meet my wonderful husband. We just celebrated 24 years being together. And I was very, very blessed that after college, I'm also a Finnish citizenship. I got to move to Finland to do my master's and to train for the 2008 Olympics. So I got to go to Worlds that year, and I was ranked 30th in the world. They were going to take 44 people to go to the Olympics. 12 days before opening ceremonies, I got a wonderful phone call that said they're taking 29. So I was the very first person not to go, and I was crushed. That was my life goal. I wanted it for my resume. It's okay. It all worked out. But I was super hyper-focused. Throughout my life, I've realized when I'm interested in something, I am interested in something. And what happened, fast forward, so I didn't go to the Olympics. I finished my master's. I ended up doing studies on motivation. That's what I did my master's thesis on. I currently still have the largest study ever done in the sport of diving on motivation. This was back in the day when Facebook was new and you could contact people, and you only could have you had to have an American college email address to be on Facebook. I remember my Canadian friends were like, "What is Facebook?" But I still didn't know I had ADHD. So I said, I want to study motivation, because why is this thing so easy for everybody and it's so hard for me? Then fast forward, don't get to go to the Olympics, really still interested in motivation, so this is what I do my PhD on, and we moved, so I finished my courses and classes, and then it was in between Denver, Colorado, and Vancouver, Canada, where we were going to move. And we decided, my husband and I, to move to Denver, because we had done our undergrad at the University of Wyoming, which is like like 2 hours away, so we'll have a good big friend base. So we ended up moving there. That was in 2010, and we were just supposed to check it out for a year. All I wanted at that point is to have a businessy job and dress businessy. So these are clothes from there. Now I just wear workout clothes every day. So I work at a law firm and realize I cannot sit at a desk. Like, I'm sure the people at my table, I kicked the major a few times. I'm like, sorry, I just can't do this. It was not ideal situation, but while I was there, I ended up getting my first and only research grant to pursue PhD research. So I already finished my courses, and now I was going to collect data on high-level athletes across North America, so in Canada and the United States, and then there was a master's student who was collecting data in Finland. And while I was at the law firm and realizing I couldn't sit still, I had this idea that maybe I can help people move at work. Long story short, I ended up getting a research grant, getting married, and never having to go to that law firm job again. So then, I'm only working on data, only working on statistics, and I become really depressed. So I go see my first therapist, and I say, every time I have to work on this boring data, I can't focus. Maybe I have ADHD. And she goes, you're an adult woman, you're successful, you do not, that's not a thing. You don't have ADHD. And I said, okay. So she put me on antidepressants, didn't like them, did not work for me. Fast forward lots of years. There was some drama with my supervisors, with my research. Basically, they were taking my research and presenting it as their own, which is frustrating because it's mine. And I became pretty depressed and realizing now that depression is a symptom of unmanaged ADHD, as is anxiety. So I take like 7 years off of my PhD because it's not interesting to me, and I start back into fitness. So my husband said, why don't you personal train like you did in college? You really love that. That was in 2011, and in 2013 I started my own company, and then I was happy again. When I was helping humans move their body and feel good and change their life, I was happy. I did that. I worked with elite athletes in 3 different countries at all levels. And when you're helping an athlete get a millisecond faster, jump a little bit higher, like yes, it's great, but you're not necessarily changing their life. Once I got to change someone's life by giving them life skills, there was no going back. So I kind of put the PhD on hold, took 7 years off, and my supervisor reached out to me and said, you can't take 10 years to do a degree, you have to finish by the end of this year. This will come up, but timeliness and urgency is one of the only things, there's 4, that motivate an ADHDer. So I'm like, yes, okay, give me a deadline, I got a year, let's write this dissertation. So I go to read the research that I wrote, and I don't understand. It's academic, so academic writing is basically write whatever you can so no one understands. So I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh, I feel like my brain is broken. So I go get a brain scan, specifically a SPECT scan. You do it 2 times, they have you go in normal, they scan your brain, and then they give you an iPad, and you have to do a really boring task. They inject your arm into something, and then they scan your brain again. And they tell me, your brain turns off. You have no blood flow in the frontal lobe of your brain when you're doing something boring. And I said, yeah, that's what I said. This is a great turns off. But that was when I was officially diagnosed with ADHD for the first time. And then you have to do it again if you want to try medicine. I will quickly, if you guys have any questions, talk about medicine. It doesn't help everybody. I have tried 4 different kinds, some stimulants, some non. I don't love to take it every day. I take it when I need to sit still, look at a computer, and do boring work tasks, okay? Movement, which we'll be doing, is going to be the best thing for ADHD. So also when I got the brain scan, they diagnosed me with TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, in all lobes of my brain. So I have had 10 plus concussions, and so some of this is ADHD, but also is a little TBI. But they also diagnosed me with anxiety. And I said, I don't have anxiety until I had COVID. And then I couldn't work out. And then I felt like my heart was racing out of my chest, and I was shaking, and I had this like heart palpitations that people talk about, and I was worried about things. And I said, oh, this is anxiety, because humans are meant to move, and ADHDers love to move a little bit more. Okay, so before we dive into the not so great things, we're going to start by talking about positives. So the superpowers of ADHD. We're going to skip page 1, and we'll come back, but you're going to flip to page 2 in your workbook. And I'm going to chat a little bit about some of these superpowers, and I just want you to reflect on the humans you know in your life that you think maybe could have ADHD, and how can you incorporate their superpower into their role, or maybe something that they have challenges with. I'm going to start with the last one. So empathy and not sympathy. If you are talking to an ADHDer about something that's important to you, here's what they're going to do. They're going to make it seem like it's about them. It's not about them. What they're doing is connecting the feeling that you're having with a situation that they've had before. So this is how we relate to humans. And if you aren't aware of that, sometimes you'll be interacting with someone and you're like, every time I tell them something about me, what I'm going through, they reflect how this happened to them. That's how we connect, okay? That's how we can get in the feelings of what you're going through. And it seems a little selfish. Our brains need it to be about us all the time, okay? And we can take what society says and we try and make it about us so that we can be interested. Because when it's not about us, we don't care. Being real. Okay. We are not detail-oriented. So when I was in Finland, I worked for the Erasmus Mundus master's program, which is a great program. You can get education for free and travel to 4 countries. If you want to get a master's degree, side note, they don't promote me to tell you that, but it's just an awesome thing. And I asked for a recommendation letter from my boss after, when I was moving back to the States. And in Finland, they're very honest. They don't have this like, oh, it's a recommendation letter, I'm going to write nice things about you. She wrote some nice things, but also said, Saara's not very detail-oriented. She misses a lot of little mistakes. And so if you see little mistakes in these slides, I did it myself. Nicole, who usually helps me out, has been on vacation for 2 weeks. So we do not see, we can notice mistakes that other people make. So like editing is great. But as far as like seeing the tiny details, especially if it's something we're not hyper-focused on, that's not our strong suit. Multitasking. We love to do a lot of things all the time, okay? And the science says that the brain doesn't necessarily work like that, but I tend to argue that an ADHD brain works like that a little, okay? So you can have a lot of things going on. The best way I like to explain it is ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So there's no ADD anymore. They added in the H. So we're going to go over this in a second, but I think it's labeled wrong. It should be executive dysfunctioning. So it's not that we have an attention deficit. For a lot of us, it's not like a flashlight. Like a regular person needs to focus, and they have a flashlight and they can shine it on whatever they need to focus on. I feel like an ADHD brain is a floodlight. And yes, we might need to focus on that, but I'm seeing this. I see people moving over there. I can hear things. Like, the flashlight is huge, okay? So it's not that it's an inability to focus. I find it's easier to explain as it's an inability to focus because we're getting so much information and our brain is working really, really quickly, okay? So in your workbook, pick your top 3 superpowers from here, write them down, and we are going to take a 1 minute. This is a fitness timer block. It's going to beep at 60 seconds. And I just want you to reflect on some of these superpowers and how can you apply them to your role, your life, to the human that you have in your brain that may or may not have ADHD to help them out. Okay, 1 minute, ready, steady, go.
Team activities. Go ahead. Go ahead. 1, 2, 3. You need to do something.
We're halfway.
Quick man.
Beep, beep, beep. Okay. Here's what our grades look like. This is the only note card that I have because I cannot remember these things. So, you're going to go to page 1. Beautiful. So this is a brain scan of ADHDers, and you're going to notice the top purple part, it looks like we have holes in our brain. That's gray matter. It works differently for us. So I'm going to go over what executive functioning is, but I just wanted to show you that the structural differences actually exist in our brains. Like when you tell us to focus better, that doesn't really help because our brains are actually structured differently. And I have some notes here of comorbid conditions. I know in the Salvation Army, you care about humans and you help, okay? Substance abuse and misuse and disorder is 44% higher in ADHD humans. This is usually because they're lacking the receptors for dopamine. And dopamine is the motivation neurotransmitter. So they're always seeking stimulation. Okay, that percentage in the normal population for substance abuse is about 5.6%. So 6% compared to 44%. Because our brains are different, we are looking for substances to help. That substance can be food. That substance can be alcohol. That substance can be scrolling on the internet. Okay? Our brains are always searching for some sort of stimulant. Okay. 3 types of ADHD. I know there's only 2, but these are If you are inattentive, you might appear forgetful, disorganized, easily distracted, make careless mistakes, inability to pay attention, inability to listen and focus, especially during conversations. You might procrastinate, and it's going to be challenging for you to stay on task. That's inattentive, okay? Hyperactive. When we think hyperactive, ADHD, so inattentive tends to be what females are diagnosed with more, because our brains are active, but it might not be presenting. We're twitching, or we're moving our body all the time, or we can't sit still. Okay, so that's inattentive. For hyperactive, we have excessive energy, impulsive, difficulty sitting still, speak out of turn, interrupt others, act quickly without thinking things through, fidget, talk excessively, feel restless, on edge, and we may be perceived as disruptive. So, 3 types of ADHD: inattentive, hyperactive. Anybody want to guess the third one?
Oh, combined.
Yeah, combined. Anybody want to guess what I have? Combined. Oh, look, this table totally new. So I feel like I'm really good to talk about ADHD because I have both.
One is hyper and one is hyper.
So those are the 3 types. There's inattentive, hyperactive, and combined. That picture that I showed you earlier with the brain, our frontal lobe controls our executive functioning. So things that have to do with executive functioning, any sort of planning, any sort of thinking through. Our reward center is different. I talk about motivation a lot, and the science of motivation works for everybody. But ADHDers are a little bit different. Has anyone here ever heard, tell your goals out loud, they're more likely to come true? That's what I was taught. Here's the thing. If you are an ADHDer, you tell someone about your goal, you're going to get a dopamine hit as if you've already done it. So that you won't follow through and do the things. Test. Good. Okay, so your executive functioning can also be taxed as a regular human. If you're tired, maybe you have a health condition, maybe you're experiencing some brain fog, maybe you're overly stressed out. So normal humans, you can pretend you're ADHD and all these tips will still work. Maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep last night. Regular humans, this applies as well. Okay, at the bottom of your workbook on page 1, these are the fill in the blanks. So there are 2 ways to get ADHD. Number 1, genetic. Number 2, traumatic brain injury. Saara has both, so I'm super ADHD. There's also been a few studies that say lead exposure in utero is also a possible way. Okay, this stat, 75 to 85% of people with ADHD are undiagnosed. There's actually a new study that said this is potentially wrong. So it was OSHU, and it came out last year, and it said that might even be as low as 3.5%. 3.5%. Because of the symptoms, mimic other things. So, males are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed. This is because it usually shows up as that excessive movement, that inability to sit still. It's usually when you think of that 7-year-old boy who can't move, who moves too much. It's much easier for them to get that diagnosis versus the 7-year-old girl who's got the same thing going on, but it's all up in her head, okay? This was something that was very sad for me when I found out, by the age of 10, an ADHDer usually has up to 20,000 negative comments or feedback because their brain works differently and they're trying to put themselves into regular society. And if you don't know your child has ADHD and you're saying, stop, just be like everybody else, that doesn't always work. Okay. This is just a real quick lesson on motivation. This is from my PhD. You can fill this out at the top of workbook page 3. There are 6 types of motivation. This ranges on a continuum from amotivation, which is zero motivation at all, to being intrinsically motivated. I'm not going to get into the science too deep. All I'm going to show you is that human beings want to be intrinsically motivated, and I'm going to give you some secrets on how to make that happen. But before we do that, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I want you to draw your very best card. Okay? On your mark. Get set. Show me your drawing skills.
Oh my God. I can't. That's a real. I can't even. Okay, so that's the body. Don't do that.
That's right.
And then you just.
I'm going to show the 4,000 batteries in the bottom of my car.
Look. I did one. After the roof.
There's my very best card.
Okay, where's the wheel? There's a steering wheel.
You can see your steering wheel. Go on, Miss Donna.
It looks like.
Look at you. You look like that. Look like a Camry.
I know, right? Okay.
Good 18 seconds. Make sure it's got wheels and rims and what other fancy things you want.
It has some. What is it? Oh, this is a car right here, Karen. So just put in the wheel.
You just
Beautiful. Okay, you're gonna hold your car up and show the people at your table just for fun.
Very nice.
Oh, I'm supposed to. You have people in your car and everything. Overachiever.
Taking up time. Artists in the room. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so the self-determination theory is one of 2 basic motivational theories. This is Deci and Ryan. It's been around since '77. They were still publishing in 2009. That's when I was still active in motivational research. So it's based on the idea that to get intrinsically motivated, and this is for everybody, not just ADHDers, but this is very important to know. There are 3 basic psychological needs. And I want you to keep this in mind whenever you're trying to motivate someone, okay? One of these is going to be lowest. That's the way to have the quickest success, is to be able to figure out what that is and to tackle that. So the C stands for competence. This is the feeling that you can do it, okay? Doesn't mean you know how to do it. You just have to have the belief that you can learn how to do it. But they have to believe it's possible for them to do anything. Okay, so even if they don't have the skill yet, the competence is to learn that they can do that. So that's the C. Autonomy. Autonomy is you are deciding for yourself. Okay, I do a lot of personal training. Sometimes I'll have a spouse that's doing awesome and they want me to work out their significant other. And I said, no, let me talk to that person. They need to want to do it if they want to have change. So, especially with ADHDers, we can't force them to do anything. They need to want to do it. Okay, so that's autonomy. And the last one, the R, is relatedness. So we are humans, and we're meant to be surrounded by other humans and do things that other people are doing that have the same interests as us, that are doing similar work. So whenever you're trying to motivate someone to bring them more on the continuum from the previous slide, think of the car. And if there's any way that you can increase one of these, can you help them feel more competent, more autonomous, or related? And sometimes competence and autonomy is challenging, but I know in your roles, relatedness is always something we can talk about. I'm here with you, I care about you, I'm here to help. What do you need from me? Just let them know they're not alone. That is going to help them be more intrinsically motivated. I just want to burn that in, that's why I had you guys draw a car. Okay, this next one is a little activity. These are your 4 words you get to use on those triangles. That is page number 4. So, I want you to take a moment and just fill in, thinking the triangle at the top. What starts? Behavior. Motivation, action, or results. I'm going to give you the answer in 20 seconds. Everyone gets 100%. Okay, here you go. So, everyone believes that when you want to take action on something, it starts with motivation. You know when that happens? January 1st.
Right.
And it lasts 9 days. Okay, everyone thinks, I'm waiting to get motivated, and then I'll take action. Wrong. So what you need to do for yourself and to help others is to help them take action first. Once you take action, getting started is hard, okay? Especially transitioning for ADHDers is a challenge. We just need to take the next best step, okay? Not even the next best step, the next 2-minute action. If a train has a 2-inch concrete block in front of it, it cannot get started. But once it has momentum, it can crash through a 5.5-foot concrete wall. Okay? What we need to do with our humans is get them into momentum. Don't wait for motivation. Motivation is not coming unless it's January 1st. This is one of my very favorite quotes. Every day we need to motivate ourselves. Okay? Unless it's January 1st. So, motivation doesn't last. Either just showering, that's why you recommend it daily. Okay, beautiful, I just said this one. So, there are 2 things that exist in an ADHDer's brain in regards to time. There is right now and not right now. Okay? Time blindness. Time blindness tends to be a real thing. My husband will say we have to leave the house in 5 minutes. I said, okay, great. I'm going to paint. I'm going to do gardening, put my makeup on, and I'll see you in the car in 5 minutes. It is very challenging to grab the concept of time. Okay, so also keep that in mind. Keep them focused. Ask them, what do you need to do right now? What's happening now? Check in on them a lot. Okay? This is my PhD in 1 sentence. We can only control what we can control. Okay? We tend to ruminate and get an idea in our head and keep circling and circling and circling, but we can only control what we can control. Okay, here's the good stuff. The 4 ways to motivate a ADHD human. You can fill this out on page 5. I like to use this acronym FUNK. So, has to be fun. When you're talking to your humans, how can we make this fun? How can we make this more enjoyable? How can we bring more joy into this experience? Going back to that time thing, we do great under pressure when there's a timeline, okay? Time is challenging for us, but if you tell us we need to get this done in an hour, we're going to get it done in an hour, okay? So because time is now and not now, when you're talking to humans, just keep that in mind. Okay, maybe this project is 5 days out. You're going to also need to check with them every day, almost, to be like, what have you done? You have 4 more days left. You have 3 more days left. Remind them, time exists differently for us. Anything that is new or novel is going to be awesome. We do not like doing the same things over and over again. If you're in a role where an ADHDer has to do things over and over again, try and create new ways to do the same thing. Motivate while doing is a really good one. So you can always pair a boring task with a funner task. Maybe it's music, or maybe it's just being in the same room with someone. That's the concept of body doubling, and that is very, very beneficial for an ADHDer. They have the pressure of someone else there, so it's easier to focus. You get a little bit of stimulation. And letter C is for challenge. Can you make this a game? Can you make this a competition? You don't necessarily, unless they are into it, want to have 2 people compete against one another, unless it works in that situation. Also competing with yourself and keeping track of things, and next time, can we do it better? That's also a really great way to motivate. Okay, Pomodoro technique. This is based on the idea that you do 20 minutes of work, you take a 5-minute rest, you do 4 rounds of that, and then you take a longer rest. The reason it works is our brain 20 minutes is not too overwhelming for us, and you also want to work on one task at a time and turn off all distractions. Okay, this next slide is going to be other ways that help to motivate humans who have ADHD. The biggest ones are going to be, do you know what the next step is? Do you know what your priority is? Do you know how to break this task down into steps? Okay. Also, if you can bring a human, remember earlier the slide, now and not now, into the now. What is happening now? What tends to happen is we go down on these rabbit holes and think about all the possible things. Bring them back into that moment of right now. Okay, what's going on right now? What do you need to tackle right now? What's the next 2-minute action? Now. Because we want to think of all the things. Okay. Here are some tasks that are challenging for us. So the things in the white, those are going to be for the hyperactive humans. Things in the yellow, those inattentive. And then for all humans, the things in the black. So transitioning. Our brain moves very quickly. So what I always love to recommend, if you can theme your days or your half days. So maybe the first part of Monday, have them working on only one thing versus every day having to bounce back in between tasks. The time, the cognitive resources that are required to switch from task to task takes more time and resources. So if you can theme your days or your hours, depending on what works best in your situation, that's going to be awesome. Getting help with them to just get started. They can take it, but just give them a little push of what you need to get started, okay? Because that transition is hard. Asking for help is hard. So let them know that you are there to help them. Ask me for help whenever you need it. Use these phrases all the time, and they'll understand that you care, and then it will be easier to get help when they need it, okay? If you know this person has a hard time focusing, I want you to check in on them way more than you think is required. So even if they have a lot of autonomy in their role, and let's say you do a quarterly check-in, I want you to break that down and maybe every month, every week. We need more help, and we're never going to say we need help. Okay, so check in on those people. Language. Okay, we're going to skip this one. It's in your workbook on page 6. If you want to do it after, it's very self-explanatory. But as I said, time is a challenge for me. So, language for feedback. There is something called rejection sensitivity disorder that a high percentage of ADHDers have. They also have oppositional defiance disorder. So what this is if anybody tells you what to do, you kind of rebel against that. I even have this with myself. For instance, I bought bulbs to put in my garden, and usually that would be fun. But the second I say I need to get the bulbs in the garden before I go to Milwaukee, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I told myself I had to do it, I'm not doing it. So when you're giving feedback, really reflect on that car. Can you help them feel autonomous? Can you also phrase your feedback in a way that's giving them, I am giving you this feedback because. Okay, why are you giving the feedback? So it doesn't feel personal to them, because we take feedback, even if asked, very much to heart. So there's a 3-step process. The first one is to provide your intention. The second is to share the truth. So why are you giving that feedback? And number 3 is to name the facts. Here's what I'm noticing. Focus on the actual outcome versus what the human is doing, so it doesn't feel so much in your heart. Okay, one of my coaches, I started coaching at the age of 14, taught me the sandwich technique. I believe he called it the Oreo technique. So what you do is you tell them they're doing something good, you tell them what they need to improve, and then you close the sandwich with something good again. Okay? Adam Grant is an organizational psychologist who's blowing up in media a lot. I also recently learned that he was also a diver. But he says these 18 words when providing feedback, you might want to write this down or take a photo of it, is I am giving you this feedback because I have very high expectations, but I'm confident you can reach them. A human will hear this with a kinder heart and be able to take action without it feeling like it hurts them. Okay. Workbook page 7. I would love for you to pick out your favorite 3 phrases that you can use to talk to an ADHD human. The best resource, you might question what this, let me show you how this goblin.tools app is. Write this down, goblin.tools. It is a website. You can type absolutely anything into it and it will give you a task list. You can say, write me a grocery list. If you want anything expanded on, there's a magic wand. You click that and it breaks that task down. Okay? Breaking tasks down into smaller steps is going to be the key for success. I know this is going to come up again, but do not rely on verbal instruction. If you give verbal instruction, ask that human to write this down. I forgot to say at the beginning of this presentation. The reason I have you writing is because our brain makes different neurological connections when we are taking pen to piece of paper. Okay, it's going to go deeper into our subconscious. Our brain is going to remember that better, and the act of actually writing has been scientifically proven to be much better than typing anything. So if you're ever giving anybody verbal instructions, say, I'll follow that up with an email, can you write this down? But if you're telling someone with ADHD something, it's like you didn't even tell them. Maybe like 10% I retain that information. This happens to me a lot with personal training clients throughout the day. At the end of the day, I told my husband, I was like, I promised like 3 things to 3 people, and I don't know who it was and what it was. So even myself, whatever is important, I always make sure to write it down. Okay, as a elder millennial, I did research the same way the millennials do, and I went to Facebook. And I'm in a lot of ADHD groups, and I said, if you could let other people know, what do you want them to know? Here are some things that came up. Out of sight, out of mind. This also applies to humans. So I love my best friend, but she's in Canada. And when I'm not in Canada, she really doesn't exist to me in my brain unless I see a photo of her or she texts me. And it's not that I don't care, I just forget. This works great when I'm trying to hide the cookies. I put them in a metal tin at the top and I don't see them and they don't exist. So, verbal instructions I talked about. 1 touch. If I can touch something once, that's going to be really easy for me. So going back to that transition. So if there's an email, I don't want to see it and say, I'll get back to this, because I will not remember. So if you can only touch something once, that's awesome. We tend to have this all or nothing thinking, black or white. I always love to say, life exists in the gray. I see this a lot in fitness and health. People are like, I'm on the wagon or I'm off the wagon. I had a cheeseburger, so I'm throwing the whole week away, and on Monday I'll start again. I always love to tell humans, there is no wagon, there is only life, and the next decision, or the decision that you're making now, that's what matters. Oh yeah. If you interrupt us, you need to remember what we're saying, because I won't remember. But I have slides and no one interrupted me, so that's great. KISS. Keep it stupid simple. The more simple it is, whether you're giving instructions, whether you're giving a checklist, all that extra information, not required. Simpler equals better. If it's challenging to focus, change an environment is great. Get someone moving if at all possible. If you can take a human on a walk, they're gonna fire, their brain is gonna fire differently, their impulsivity is gonna go down, they're gonna get rid of some of their excess energy, they're gonna be easier, it's gonna be easier for them to focus. So if you're dealing with a challenging employee, take them for a walk. Say, let's go on a walking meeting. 2 other things, dolphining. This tends to be, if you're talking about something and suddenly I bring something else up, what happens is they call it dolphining because you're going under the water and the ADHDers are making a lot of connections that you may not see as a connection. This happens to my husband and I a lot. The best way to combat that is to ask, oh, I didn't quite get how that was connected. Can you fill me in? And it gives you a good opportunity to see how those people's brains work, because you might say something and I'm talking about something totally different because it reminded me of something else. Side quests or rabbit holes. Rabbit holes happen a lot, especially if you don't have slides. Okay, some strategies that can help. Scheduling. I think I talked about this at the beginning. It is challenging for ADHDers to come up with a schedule, but if you can help them come up with a schedule or a system that works for them, that's going to be awesome. Most humans have a power hour, so 1 hour of their day where they do a lot better work than others. You can help humans find out what time that is. For females, if you can sync a hard task with your cycle, I won't get too into it, but you can always reach out and ask. There are 2 times of the month when it's going to be way easier to do challenging tasks than others. If you know you have an ADHD in your office, have them create either like a literal sign that says, "Don't bother me, I'm working," or have them close their door, because if they are in hyper-focus mode and you distract them, it might take 10 times longer to get them back on track. So just that open communication of like, "I'm working, leave me alone." Checklists are great. You can create checklists on goblin.tools. I'm mentioning again, this is phenomenal, life-changing, always written instructions via email, or have them physically write it out, pen to paper, so it sticks in your brain. Movement breaks, change of scenery, and no big projects. So if you need to give someone a big project, I want you to break it down into tasks and steps, because that is a little bit challenging for us. Okay, I promised you movement. Only 5 minutes. Okay, I promised you movement, so we're going to do a teeny little exercise, and then we're going to do a reflection. So, I'd love everyone to sit with both feet on the floor. Okay, just going to ask, would anybody be upset if their core was a little bit stronger? Nobody? Okay, good. So, what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze your knees together. Yeah. And then I want you to pull your belly button into your spine. Not like you're trying to put skinny jeans on, like I'm going to punch you in the gut. Okay, so you're going to squeeze your knees together and squeeze your core and just hold that for 5. Keep squeezing for 4. Keep squeezing for 3, 2. Beautiful. Okay, now lift one leg, just a few inches. You're holding it for 8 seconds. 7, 6. Those are cute boots. Sorry. 3, 2. Switch sides. Lift that other knee up. Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Beautiful. But movement can change someone's psychological state. So when things are in chaos, when things are challenging, if you can just even ask someone, take a deep breath with me. It can get your brain firing in a different way. Okay. 2 more slides. Look at me. I'm doing time right. Usually I don't get through everything. Okay, so for the now self-reflection. The way that our brains work is we like to learn, and then we don't often do. So we're going to take a moment. That self-reflection is on page 8. I'm going to give you some time, and I want you to think of 3 things that you've learned that you can put into your work now, within 1 week. So by Thursday next week, if you have to interact with any humans or ADHD humans, how can you do that differently? 1 minute. Ready, steady, go. Time's up for that one. The next one, something you might put into action a little bit in the future. So in the next 30 to 60 days. And then the next question is something you can start doing this year. 1 minute.
That's also hard. We're supposed to be doing movements. So maybe we can start, yes, yeah, so start doing this year, exercising.
Beautiful, time's up for that one. And then the last question is, what are the next 3 steps? And if you do not know what those next 3 steps are, I encourage you to check out goblin.tools. They don't pay me either, but you'll see how phenomenal it is, and they're going to break down those steps for you. I will mention the last page, page 9, is a reflection for you to do this evening. If you have a little bit more time, so you can think about how you can put this into action and how you can best serve the humans that you need to serve. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will also say at the back, there's a QR code. If you fill that out, I will email you more resources to help yourself if you have ADHD or to help others. You'll get different emails depending on which one you check off. And if you have questions for me, I will be sticking around through lunch, and then I'm getting on an airplane to go back to Denver. But reach out at any time. Thank you so much. I hope you got some value from this, and thanks for having me. Questions? Well, thanks.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Saara will be around through lunch, as she said, so feel free to talk with her some more. Thank you very much. That was extremely interesting, I thought.